welcome to Lesson 2 for Math 7, Unit 1. This is all about algebraic expressions. Now, algebra is a branch of mathematics which uses symbols in place of numbers. So it provides a simple shorthand way of writing expressions, finding rules, and solving problems that deal with unknown quantities. Now, we use a variable to represent a set of numbers, or even one number. And variables are always written in italics or cursive on paper, so that they're not confused with units of measurement. And they are always, always, always lowercase letters. The reason that we use lowercase letters instead of uppercase letters is uppercase letters almost always represent a formula. So a capital A for area or a capital P for perimeter, as opposed to a lowercase p, which is a variable in an algebraic equation. So we want to make sure that when we're writing out our variables that we're always using lowercase. So, and again, the variable can be any letter. It can, an N is often used, X is used a lot, but you can use it to represent what it is that you're trying to find. So if you have a question where you're trying to find an unknown number of CDs, you could use the letter C. If you're trying to find an unknown number of students, you could use S. So it doesn't matter what the variable is, and when you guys do your practice questions, unless you're prompted to use a specific letter, you can use whatever letter you like. So an algebraic expression looks like this: 4n plus 8, 3t minus 6, or 9 plus 7s. An expression has no equal sign. All right, so this all by itself is an unsolvable equation. You would need to know the value of s, or the value of t, or the value of n in order to come up with an actual finished number for these expressions. There's a bunch of different parts of your algebraic expression or equation, but right now we're just dealing with expressions. So you have a numerical coefficient, and that is the number that goes in front of your variable. So your numerical coefficient, or the NC, represents how many groups of the variable they are. So if your unknown value is t, and we have 6 groups of t, then you would write it like this: 6t, which essentially means 6 times t. When we write like this, 6t instead of 6 times t, we call that product notation. And we do that to make our expressions simpler. And so we try to eliminate our multiple sign or our division sign whenever possible. So the numerical coefficient is the number that comes directly in front of your variable before any type of operation. So if it's 6 plus t, that's different than 6t. That would be 6 being your constant term, which we'll come to in a minute, and t your variable, as opposed to 6t, which is your numerical coefficient with the number of groups of t we have. All right, so if you have t plus 3, then the numerical coefficient is always 1, because this t right here represents one group of t, and so the numerical coefficient would be 1. Okay, if which is different than if you have no constant term, again, which we will get to in just one second. So here's the constant term. The constant term is part of the expression that never ever changes. Okay, so regardless of what value the variable is or what the numerical coefficient is, the constant term always stays the same. So, for example, down here we look at 4t plus 6. So again, the 4 is our numerical coefficient because it comes before our variable of t, plus 6. So regardless of what t is, we are always going to add 6 to it. That is never going to change. It remains constant. So that stays as our constant term. Okay, so now this comes back to, if there's no obvious constant term, then it's always 0 or no constant term. So with just 6t, there is no plus or minus sign or an equal sign, so there is no constant term attached to that. All right, here's a positive sign or a plus sign, and a 6, so our constant term is 6. If we had an equal sign here with a number at the end, then we could also say that 6 and whatever this equation equaled could be constant terms, because that's never going to change either. So putting algebraic expressions into words. So 4t plus 6 can be written in words, and it's a skill that you guys are going to have to know. When we do this, we try not to use words like add, subtract, or multiply. We use words such as more than, less than, and times. So the above expression would be written like this: 6 more than 4 times a number. Okay, so we have 6 more than 4 times a number. It's important that you put the expressions in the right order, because if you said it this way, 4 times a number more than 6, it would be written the other way like this: 6 plus 4t. when you're dealing with addition, it doesn't really matter because, as you know, 4 plus 3 is still 7 regardless of whether you say 4 plus 3 or 3 plus 4. The answer is still 7. But where it does matter is when you're dealing with subtraction. Okay, so 4 plus 3 is 7. 4 minus 3 is 1, but 3 minus 4 is negative 1. So you get a completely different answer on the different side of the number line. So you have to pay attention, and it's really good practice, even with your addition equations, to try and put them in the right order. Okay, so 4t minus 6 would be 6 less than 4 times a number. Okay, so we've got our 4 times a number, and it's 6 less than that. So you have to write it almost backwards. So 6 less than 4 times a number. And again, this is totally different than 4 times a number less than 6, which would be the other way around, which would be 6 minus 4t. So if we say, as an example, if t equals 3, then 6 less than 4 times a number would be 4 times 3 minus 6, which equals 6, right? 4 times 3 is 12, minus 6 is 6. If you did 4 times a number less than 6, then it would be 6 minus 4 times 3, again, which is negative 6, which is a completely different answer than our positive 6 up here. So it's really important that you pay attention into what order they go in. And often if you put them, if they're written out backwards than the way you would put them in numerical form, you're almost always going to get it right. So then we evaluate our expression. This evaluating our expression essentially means that you're solving it. So you've been given enough information to solve your expression. And as I mentioned before, expressions do not have equal signs. Okay, so 4t plus 6 is an expression. There is no equal sign here, but if you're given the value of t, then you can evaluate by substituting the t for the number 2. So we would 4 times 2 is 8, plus 6 is 14. So we've evaluated or solved this expression because we had all of the information that we needed to do so. So because 4t plus 6 means 6 more than 4 times a number, we replace t with a 2 and then add 6. Okay. When you have a variable over a number, it means divide. So if you have an x like this over 2, so it would be x divided by 2. So again, that product notation where we get rid of this sign and do it as simply as possible like this. Okay, so that's the end of this, and it's just a very brief introduction into the different parts of an algebraic expression. So we will do some practice with this stuff, writing things out in sentences, taking sentences and turning them into expressions in class next time.